From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to an episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased, very honored to have with me, joining me from the US, Gene Kim. Gene, I know that many people know who you are. You're a famous guy, I know this, but still, can you tell us who is Gene and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much for having me on. So my name is Gene Kim. I've been studying high-performing technology organizations for 24 years, 25 years now. And that was a journey that started back when I was a CTO and the technical founder of a company called Tripwire in the information security and compliance space. And so we called these high performers, those organizations that had the best project due date performance and development, the best operational reliability and stability in ops, as well as the best posture, security, and compliance. So we want to understand, what are those amazing organizations doing differently, so we can figure out how other organizations can replicate those amazing outcomes. And so, as you can imagine, in a 25-year journey, there are many surprises, but the biggest surprise was how it took me into the middle of the DevOps movement, which I think is just so urgent and important. I mean, in a time of unprecedented disruption that all of our industries are facing these days, nothing matters more than being able to adapt quickly, deliver value quickly, and learn quickly. So what I've been working on for the last 3 years is working with Dr. Steven Spear at the MIT Sloan School of Business, really trying to understand this question of what is in common, between DevOps, and Agile, and the Toyota production system, and Lean, resilience engineering, and our conclusion is that they're all incomplete expressions of a far greater whole, and that it was the most intellectually challenging thing I've ever worked on, but it was also one of the most rewarding, because what we found was that there's actually only 3 mechanisms of performance that allow organizations to go from good to great, or maybe not so good to great. And so it just very much validated so much of what I've learned in the DevOps journey, including the state of DevOps research, which is something I did with the with Dr. Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble. And that was a cross-population study that spanned over 36,000 respondents over 6 years. And we found that there are some things that really matter for performance, and we called them, cultural norms, technical practices, and architectural practices. And all of those came out in this parsimonious theory of performance that we put into this book called, as you mentioned, Wiring the Winning Organization, that just came out a couple months ago.
Fantastic. And of course, we little bit deep dive as much as we can, because the topic, and I like the concept, honestly, because, it's like mentioning few,
Huh.
I would say, terms that for some people looks like complex and, what we need to do about this, but it ends up like, something much easier than this. But let's start, because I know, and thank you, you shared with me, the team shared with me, the ebook, and, I had the chance to just skim the important parts. So there are like mainly 3 themes, as you mentioned. And I want to start with the first one, which is you talk about slowfication, right? So, and you mentioned that it's a key deliberate problem solving.
Yeah.
I want to understand more about this, because, I think we saw before, like, slow down to go fast and this kind of,
Yeah.
of concept. But I want to understand from, of course, how we can leverage it in technology and all the topics you mentioned. What is it, and how we can use it, and if you can give us like maybe a real use case about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I love what you suggested, which is, yeah, I very much agree with you. I think anyone can take something simple and make it appear complex, and it is a lot harder to take something complex and make it genuinely simple. And so our observation is that whenever you see an organization transform, there are really only 3 mechanisms of performance. The first one is slowfication. And our observation was that a surprising kind of conclusion that we came to was that there's no single word in English that really embodies this concept of slowing down to speed up. I love that you picked up on that phrase. The notion of making a short-term investment for a longer-term gain. And so there are many adages that suggest this, like slow, like stop sawing to sharpen the saw, or slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And the root of this concept is that when you are in uh, the worst time to solve problems is under when you're under a lot of time pressure, when you can't undo, when every mistake that you make is highly consequential and potentially causes a catastrophe. And this makes problem solving very difficult because if you can't undo, if you can't get multiple trials at bat, that's a problem because learning is inherently experimental, right? It is iterative. And so the worst time to solve really difficult problems is in production. And so, the notion of slowification is that you move that problem solving backwards in time, so you can do it in planning and preparation. And so, whenever you see someone doing something incredible under, when there's, incredible danger, when they're having to deal with novel situations, you just know that they had to have invested time in planning and preparation. And so I think in our DevOps space, one of the most famous examples was probably the first AWS, massive outage in 2011 when AWS East went down, which is still probably one of the largest availability zones. And so, because they put most of their big customers there, when they went down, their big customers went down. And one of the big surprises was that Netflix stayed up, and so they were famously running entirely in the AWS cloud even back in 2011. And so the question is how? And so the answer was revealed, in a blog post that they put out some days later, which described Chaos Monkey, which described this audacious set of design decisions they had made, some years back, which said, we can have no single point of failures. And their biggest single point of failure was AWS. And so to make sure that they could actually survive even massive disruption in AWS, they had something called Chaos Monkey that would randomly, kill VMs in production, during the middle of the day. And so as you can imagine, right, if that's happening all the time, and developers are responsible for not just developing the features, but also, running in production. They became very, very good at making sure their services that they created were indeed resilient. And so this explains this massive investment in planning and preparation is, what allowed them to survive these outages in production, that affected everyone else. And so this is obviously now very, very common in the cloud engineering space, in as an architectural pattern. But that's not possible, without slowification. How am I doing, Mehmet?
Fantastic. And, just to the point, back in the days, if you tell someone you're going to kill a machine in production, they will like be, oh no, like, yeah. And funny enough, like we still, talk about site reliability. We talk about, like how we can make sure like services are up and running. And it's like, uh, it's an interesting approach about, the slowification. But I think it's related to the next one also as well, which,
Oh, can I add one
about the
more?
simplification. Yeah, please.
Man, yeah. So yeah, you bring up a great point, right? Embedded within site reliability engineering, SRE, is this notion about error budgets and the notion that you can't, basically it boils down to developers can't just work on features, right? They have to allocate some amount of time, for the non-functional requirements. And so I think where so many engineering organizations, let's not call it engineering, so many organizations, engineering and product, get themselves into trouble when they are not investing enough in kind of slowification activities. So that could be automation or testing or refactoring. I love Kent Beck's new book called Tidy First. The notion of just, making sure that things are tidy so that you can, build more features, not just now, but forward in time. And so the notion of technical debt reduction, I think that too is also a phenomenal example of slowification, right? Investing in activities that may not be immediately visible or customers may value, but is absolutely critical, for long-term health of the organization.
Absolutely. Now, the second one, which is interesting also as well, because with Slowfication, we create the conditions as you were like describing, but now with simplification, you talk about like shaping problems to be simple, controllable, and easy to iterate on. Like,
Mm.
if I want to to like elaborate from your side on that, uh, because some people they say um, agility is more valued than simplicity. So how we can really keep things simple, right,
Hmm.
while staying agile? So what you can tell us about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first domain of slowification, that's shifting activities so that we're not solving our most difficult problems in production, but we're doing instead in planning and practice. The second one, as you mentioned, is actually changing the nature of the problem so that they are easier to solve. And so, if you can imagine the worst case problems to solve, not only are you doing them in production, but the problems that you're trying to solve are highly intertwined so that you can't solve just one piece of the problem without affecting everything else. And so one small mistake in one region causes a massive mistake, everywhere else because everything's so tightly coupled together. Another mark of non uh, simple problems is that you don't have independence of action. That no one to get even small things done requires communicating, coordinating, and synchronizing with scores or even thousands of other people. And so this is how organizations get stuck, right? Because even if you know what to do, you can't do it because you have to coordinate with so many other people in the organization, which actually means you probably have to escalate up many levels in the organization. And so the simplification mechanisms are um, let's see here. There's one is to make them more incremental, right? So incrementalism should probably resonate with anyone doing agile, right? We want to do things not in large batches, but in small batches, small incremental pieces. The second, and then the next two are just so amazing to me. So the second one is modularization, right? We actually partition the problem so they can be worked on independently. And so the most amazing example of this is the big Amazon API rearchitecture that happened in the early 2000s. And so the problem that they had to solve was that as they grew from just selling books and music to 35 other product categories, their ability to ship software slowed down. They went from being able to do potentially hundreds of deployments per year to only doing tens of deployments per year. In fact, most deployments in the early 2000s did not finish just because something would go wrong in the testing or deployment process and they would have to abort the deployment. And so with thousands of developers, this was a huge problem. In fact, one of the things that Dr. Werner Vogels, then and current CTO of Amazon, he said everything required a ridiculous amount of communication and coordination and synchronization. He described how the Amazon digital team, so that was Kindle, video, music, for them to be able to fulfill their products to the customers, they would have to provide a shipping address. And for a digital product, that just didn't make much sense. And so he described how they would go to the other, say 50 different ordering teams and ask that they change requirement for a physical shipping address. And they would say, we didn't budget for it. And so now they're stuck. And so I think we've all been in this situation where everything, even small changes, require just incredible amounts of coordination cost. And so the countermeasure for this was a famous two pizza team, where Jeff Bezos said that we want every one of these pizzas, so every one of these teams, no larger than can be fed by two pizzas, to be able to be independently deployed, to be able to independently solve Amazon's largest problems on behalf of their customers. And so that's what resulted in the need to re-architect their services so that there were hard modular boundaries between them so that every team could independently develop, test, and deploy value to their customers independently with no need to communicate and coordinate. And so the result of this is astounding. But they went from a handful of services to hundreds of services to eventually thousands of services. And you can see this in their deployments per day, where they shocked the world by in 2011, when they announced that they were doing 15,000 deployments per day. And then in 2014, they described how they're doing 136,000 deployments per day. And all of this was made possible by modularizing their systems, and that create independence of action to make sure that small changes remain small as opposed to rippling out into the entirety of Amazon e-commerce. And what's astonishing is that this leads to the third mechanism of simplification, which is linearization. And so linearization does for sequential processes what modularization does for parallel processes. And so if you take a look at the Toyota production system or even an assembly line, that creates the same sort of independence of action. And so in our world, that would be like, continuous integration and deployment pipelines that not only just automate a series of tasks, but it creates independence of action between, say, the testing engineers and the build engineers and the security engineers, because they can now work independently of each other. Mehmet, how am I doing?
You're doing fantastic, Gene. Amazing. Um, so, so to put back, and I like to do this from time to time. So, first, we needed to do the slowification to create, as we said, as you explained, kind of a testing, right? So to see how we will act in real time, right? And then now we talked about simplifications to, you know, dissect them into like smaller pieces so
Mm.
we can see them simple, controllable, and easy to iterate on. Now, and which I think the third one would be like very obvious, but it's how we ensure that this problem actually we would be reacting to it and not ignored. And I think this is where the third concept you talk about in the book, the amplifications, come into the picture. So want you to explain that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so amplification is all about how do you create a system where even weak signals of failure or weak cries for help are amplified so they can be decisively and quickly acted upon so that those problems can be detected and corrected quickly, but also prevented in the future. And so I would put this on a spectrum. We can imagine that. That's a very strong amplification system where even weak signals are generated, transmitted, received, acted upon, and those corrective actions are verified. Or we can imagine the opposite system where even the most urgent cries for help are suppressed or not heard or even extinguished entirely. And I think many of us we've been in situations where we are in a system where people were afraid to ask for help or ask for help while were never responded to. And so this is not a great. This is also not a great situation to be solving problems in. And so amplification is this it describes how actually we're using information theory and signal theory to show that in well managed systems in a well wired organization, not only are leaders creating the uh, space for slowification. They are changing the system so that they're simpler, but also this all signals in the system are amplified. And I think in our world, I think that's very much shows up in the resilience engineering community, in safety culture. Famously at Google and so many great engineering organizations, they have this culture of blameless postmortems. The notion of whenever something terrible happens, engineers are trained to lead and participate in uh, these practices that allow the creation of a chronology of what actually happened. What did people see? What were the mental models that caused people to react in the way they do? Because within there are the answer of how to make it easier and safer to work in the future. And so my friend Randy Shaup, he was engineering director for Google App Engine for many years at Google, and he described how uh, you know, they would have these post-incident reviews that they would share externally, and he described the value of them. That Googlers, everyone loves these outage stories. Whenever there was a customer impacting incident, people would be waiting breathlessly for the post-incident review to be published, and it wasn't just for entertainment purposes, but it's also for education. And he described this amazing dynamic that happened, which is that by doing this rigorously for every customer impacting incident, they eventually reduced the number of customer impacting incidents to the point where they didn't have enough to learn from. And so they changed the threshold so they would do this for not just customer impacting incidents, but team impacting incidents. Places like where we had 7 safeguards to prevent a customer impact, 6 of them failed. So how do we detect when that happens and better prevent it so that we can never be in that situation? And so this shows another one of those amazing dynamics that happen, when there is genuine amplification. And so the combination of slowification, simplification, and amplification is what in the book we're calling this layer 3 wiring. That it is layer 1 is kind of the work in front of us. So in technology, this could be the code that we're working on, or it could be the binary that's actually running in production. Layer 2 is the tooling and instrumentation. So there are often teams, platform teams supporting those. And layer 3 is how do teams actually communicate and coordinate with each other? What are the processes and the architectures that dictate how organizations, how teams actually interact within the organization? And I love this quote from Winston Churchill, who said, "We shape our buildings, and thereafter they shape us." So too it is with this organizational wiring, this combination of the extent to which creates simplification, slowification, and amplification. We shape these structures, and thereafter they shape us. And so the lesson we're really trying to create in the book is that we're saying that leaders are responsible for the wiring of their organizations, and that so much dictates. In fact, our assertion is that this dominates how the organization performs, and this is very much validates my 6 years of involvement in the state of DevOps research, where we call them technical practices, architectural practices, and cultural norms. That maps so cleanly to the notion of simplification, slowification, and amplification. The notion that architecture is dictates the degree of which teams can work independently and can work safely with each other. Amplification is, is there enough are signals being generated that we can act upon to prevent, detect, and correct? And all of those create and require slowification because they're not free, right? We actually have to create them. And so we think this is such a parsimonious expression of what every engineering leader has gone through. And hopefully this gives a common language that they can communicate with their business counterparts to their leadership, to get from here to there.
That's great. Now you mentioned something about leadership, Gene, and I'm curious to know how they can start. So what's the best approach to start implementing these concepts into the organization? And does it matter if the organization is still small? Maybe they are startup, scale up, or maybe a very well established organization. So are there like different, I would say, portions for each kind of organization size? And what are again the best practices to start implementing that?
Yeah. Oh, what a great question. In fact, let me start with the second one. Is this relevant for both large and small organizations? And I would say absolutely yes. I mean, I think everyone has probably experienced the challenges of growing, but even managing smaller organizations is very challenging because of the predominant um, uh, variable is not just size, but the number of functional specialties. So, I think life was a lot easier when we didn't have dev and ops, let alone dev, ops, and information security, and versus dev and QA and operation security. You got the business, and now you have generative AI, right? You have this ever increasing number of functional silos. I loved how you're focused on healthcare. One of the many things I learned, but one of the things that just sort of blew my mind working with Dr. Steven Spear was his observation that healthcare systems are so difficult to manage now compared to, say, the 1950s, where it was actually a much simpler system. The 1950s hospital essentially had only 2 functional specialties, doctors and nurses, and there was almost no technology. Which means that you don't have these teams supporting these different technology systems within the organization. Now, in the modern hospital system, you have scores of functional specialties. Even within the clinicians, you have scores of functional specialties, plus nurses, plus pharmacy, plus supply chain. Um, and then if you have technology, yes, and the result is that often if a nurse on the someone on the nursing floor has a problem with, say, the number of pills at the bedside, or torn gloves in the supply chain, they often have to escalate up 8 levels in the organization, you know, from nursing to the chief operating officer, down to pharmacy, or down to supply chain. If it involves technology, it's up eight, over one to the CIO, and down to the technical team. And so, as you increase the number of functional specialties, the sophistication and responsibilities of this layers three increases. And so the same thing has happened in technology, right? We didn't, there was a day when you just had, developers who owned operations. And now you have scores of functional specialties. You've had on your show, not just information security specialists, but AI specialists. So the job of the engineering leader is far more difficult now than it was, say, 20, 30 years ago. And so my claim would be you don't have to be running a very large organization before you can find yourself into very difficult problems, whether it's architecture, you call it architecture, or whether you call it wiring. So the where to start? And boy, what a great question. So I'll just go one by one through the three. So you have a slowification problem when you are running into problems in the live production environment, and it's bringing up questions like, "Oh my gosh, I wish we had spent more time planning and preparing. We need to do more time doing kind of drills and risk analysis and tabletop exercises so that we can better." Build those routines, to build those habits and those playbooks so that they're available to us when we are in the fast moving production environment. So listening to those signals, or from the development perspective, we find ourselves constantly running into problems while we're trying to do our development, where these are things that we should pause in production, right? And production doesn't mean live in production, but take time out of our daily work, right, to make the daily work easier. The same thing with simplification. If we find ourselves spending a lot of time having to communicate and coordinate and synchronize and prioritize together across different functional specialties, this is a great signal that there's more need for specifically modularization or linearization. So these are what gave rise to the famous re-architectures, whether it's at Amazon or at Google, or the creation of CI/CD pipelines. These are all created, by listening to those sorts of signals. And amplification spans, the entire domain. Is the leader has to be able to hear those signals, right? Which actually must be generated, right? And so, and also decisively act upon them. I love this. I was talking to Dr. Ron Westrom, who created the Westrom organizational typology model, which so much influenced the state of DevOps research. And he had this notion of the socio-technical maestro. He said those are five characteristics of great leaders. They're great in the large, great in the small. Let's see, actually, let's start again. They're high energy, high standards, great in the small, great in the large. They love walking the floor. And when he said that, it struck me as so beautiful because I recognize that. I think that is the mark of a great leader who is very highly attuned to what's going on in the organization. They love talking to people, on the front line doing work, right? And they hold themselves responsible for creating the organizational wiring, so the everyone in the organization can do their work easily and well. Mehmet, how am I doing?
Fantastic. Now I have a little bit loaded question for you, Gene, and feel free to answer it the way you want. So, how we can, because when we bring any new kind of processes to the organization, people will start to ask, okay, how are we going to measure this? Because some voices will come and say, do we really need that? Right? And then people will say, but hey, guess what? More processes, more procedures means we are slowing down, and how we're going to be like innovative and agile. So I know it's a loaded question, but how we measure how they can overcome the objections, and how we can prove that it doesn't conflict with innovation and agile and all the beautiful stuff that happens.
Yeah, I love that. And I would say the big learning for me, having studied the DevOps movement for nearly a decade now, it comes down to a very simple question that leaders should be asking, which is, can everyone in my organization do their work easily and well? And so is there a lot of toil? Is it difficult or dangerous to deploy in production? Is it hard for me to get feedback on my work quickly? Is it difficult? Is it for me to actually see whether I did my work well? Is it difficult for me to do small things where even small things require a tremendous amount of communication and coordination, or where that's dominating my effort? And I think when people express that, it's the leader's responsibility to do something about it. And we're saying there's really only three things you can do: you can slowify, simplify, or amplify. And so the objection, if the objection is coming from within the organization, um, you know, th- uh, there should be nothing more appealing, right, than having the leaders say, "There's no more important signal for me as a leader to hear the problems that you are facing in your daily work, and my job is to remove obstacles to enable you to do your work well." This is something that I found in every one of the case studies that I studied, leading up to the DevOps handbook, which, along with my fellow co-authors, this comes up in the 19 conferences called the DevOps Enterprise Summit. That I've done since 2014, which we've instantly renamed to the Enterprise Technology Leadership Summit. And it also shows up in every other of the 25 case studies that we did in Wiring the Winning Organization. Is this notion of the leader enabling? In fact, there's even a movement called, frontline empowerment that's been around for decades, which is not about the leader being nice. It's just about leaders being able to do things for people actually doing the work, right? That they cannot do alone, either because they don't have the authority, or they don't have the scope of responsibility that span multiple silos. Anyway, so I, then I think the other objection they might hear is from their peers or from their leadership, from the perspective of the technology leader. It's like, now, we don't want you creating more processes, creating bureaucracies. Well, it's absolutely not about that, right? The goal is to create organizational performance. In the state of DevOps research, we found that you can measure performance, from the technology side in terms of deployment frequency, deployment lead times, mean time to repair, and change success rate. But it was highly correlated and predicted organizational performance. To what extent um, these organizations were exceeding profitability, market share, and productivity goals, to an extent where they're achieving their organizational and mission goals. But we also found that those organizations had the highest employee net promoter scores. What percentage they were twice as likely to recommend their organization is a great place to work to their colleagues and friends. So, I think the evidence is so decisive that says, these things are not just about leaders being nice, but it's about enabling people to do their best work, which actually helps organizations achieve their objectives, regardless of what industry they're in, regardless of what company size they're in, whether it's profit or not for profit. And so for me, it's just such a satisfying set of tools to be able to sell, not just within the organization, but across and up as well.
Amazing. Just quick one, Gene. Like, who owns it usually? I mean, who can own this initiative? Is it like the CTO, the VP of engineering, from your point of view?
Yeah, we use the term organizational wiring, or we also call it social circuitry, and so we don't mean this just figuratively, but really metaphorically. We're saying that the organization is a set of social circuits, and so circuits, whether it's hydraulic or mechanical or electrical or software, they are hierarchical, and so this is the responsibility of all leaders and leaders at all levels. And so this could be an architect or a team lead. It could be a mid-level manager. It could be every leader is responsible for some portion of the organizational circuitry. And so really, I think there are two ways I would stress that are important for this. One is that there are leaders at all levels, and so just because you don't have the highest level title does not abdicate you from your responsibility to help you people in your organization, or your team do their work easily and well. But especially for the most senior leaders, there should be no mistake. They are ultimately responsible for the wiring of their organization, and so one of the things I'm just so proud of is that the forward of the book is written by Admiral John Richardson. So he was formerly the chief of naval operations for the entire U.S. Navy. He's currently on the board of Boeing and Exelon. These are safety critical organizations, and he described how the book resonated with him, and I'm hoping that that forward describes to every leader, whether it's the CEO, the CFO, their responsibility of the wiring of their organization for highly consequential organizations doing important work that affect hundreds of thousands of people. That this is something that they are responsible for. But also, I'm hoping that when people read this book, that it will resonate with them. That the problems we throw out in the book are relevant to them. Whether their teams are tens, hundreds, or even tens of thousands of people.
Amazing. I hope the same. So, but yeah, like it's fantastic because actually you're giving, the tools and let's say the know-how of how they can. And you mentioned something, which is close to my heart. So when I hear, customer satisfaction, NPS score, this is what it's all about. This is why we do what we do, whatever is our position in the organization. We are the CEO or we are a site reliability engineer, doesn't matter indeed. So of course, um, w- we touched base very little bit even before we start the recording today when we were talking about the AI. So kind of let's have like future predictions, right? So based
Yeah.
on the research that you've done, and of course the trends that you follow within how organization performance is being, you know, heading today. So how do you see, the integration of AI and automation within the business processes helping, actually to leverage, these simplification, amplification, and slowification on having better performance? So what is your take on that?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think it's for me. I find it somewhat amusing. Well, first off, let me just say what's happening in technology today with generative AI. Um, I make no claims that I can predict the future. I make no claims at being able to prognosticate what's actually going to happen. But I do find it funny that some people say that engineering and software people will go away. Right? I think and that the job of managing complex software systems and building them will somehow get simpler. Because to me, that just does not resonate at all. If we can increase the productivity and help developers do work and bring down the cost of production, what generally happens is that if we can say have the cost of producing software, we're going to have twice as much software to build because we can now do them for problems that could not have justified the investment before. Secondly, the fact that we have such disruption in the way that that software is produced means that the job of the technology leader has just gotten more difficult. And so, just like how information security being integrated into the technology value stream made life a little bit more difficult for, actually made it a lot more difficult for engineering leaders, so too does the generation of AI capability, because now we have this enormous rearrangement of work that has to happen. And before we had say the data and ML people working at the very left, we have to have development shift left there, and we actually have to shift all of ML ops all the way to the right, so they can detect and respond to things actually happening in a live production environment. When customers are directly interacting with these models, right? That means that they have to, these people have to be on the front lines. And so I think that would be very challenging. Just like developers were all, might have been all for DevOps until they learned that they might potentially have to be on pager rotation. The same thing's going to happen, with the AI and ML people. And there's actually probably going to be another silo created, called AI engineers, who are able to bridge the gap between traditional development and all of the things that AI is making possible. So anyone, so the opportunities in front of us are so vast. Personally speaking, I haven't had this much fun in technology in decades, and it's just been so much fun learning to see what generative AI can and can't do. And it is my, I guess I'll make a prediction is that, in fact, one of the things that you'll see in the that you saw in the DevOps Enterprise Summit presentations and Enterprise Technology Leadership presentations is we're having a third of the programming reserved for generative AI, just to see how leaders are responding to the generative AI challenge. Now we're going to be just like in the early days of DevOps, where we brought in these kind of unicorns to show us what's possible. What does the frontier look like? Blow us away with your stories of we're doing 136,000 deployments a day. What's the equivalent in the AI space? Just to help us as a technology leadership community see what is possible, right? So that we can see, which of these patterns are applicable, to helping our organizations win in the marketplace. So, um, sorry for that jumble of concepts. So if I have to boil it down, it's the job of
No, no,
technology
no.
leadership is it's
Fine.
not getting easier. It's getting more challenging. And so the wiring actually has to do more than it did before.
No, absolutely. And I think one of my guests, multiple guests, they mentioned the same thing that, of course, AI will not replace developers, it will not replace software engineers, but you will have software engineers that leverage AI to their benefit, and you will have the ones who would, you know, will have to do the double work to finish what they have to do. So 100% on this. And, when I'm speaking with some people who have ideas, and if you see how they are thinking about it, whether in DevOps or even like some other engineering related things, it's fascinating because just imagine you still need the human brain, right? So
Yeah.
you still need this engine to come up with the idea. But instead of me doing, and let's say in the DevOps sense, I'm not a DevOps guy by any sense, but I know the concept. So let's say if I want to have a CI/CD environment, right, and I need to go prepare it, blah blah blah, and use maybe something like Terraform or any of these other tools. So now I can go to hey, go find the best tool that can do for me one, two, three, and come back and spawn the environment to me, right? So I think this is where the power of AI. It's like about reducing the time and maybe reducing the cost also as well to solve the problem that we have. So I'm excited to see what's hidden for us in the future. So yeah, 100% on that, Gene. Um, as we've come to the end, and because you had your the Tripwire, the startup that you started, you were the CTO also as well. So if you want to reflect back, and do you wish that you had this research that you have done later in your hands at that time? And what do you advise, like, fellow founders, CTOs, that they might be on the verge of starting the next big thing?
Yeah, for sure. And yes, that question deeply resonates with me. I cannot tell you how many times in the process of the research, where there was some sort of finding that it seemed academic and it was exhilarating. To find, it was like, oh, this makes so much sense in terms of why this would impact performance that much. And then there were a couple of moments where then it really hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, right? It's like not only is it does it make intellectual sense, it had this emotional impact on me saying, "Oh my gosh, I made the wrong decision at Tripwire," where it's, that was from 1997 to 2010. And let me just share with you 2 stories. One of them was in 2004 when I watched with one of our lead engineers and one of our product managers. We were watching, and our CTO, our chief architect. We were watching a customer use our product for the first time. And there was a certain routine operation that we would expect them to do weekly, and it took them 62 clicks. And the whole time they were apologizing, saying, "Oh, there's probably a better way to do this." And I cannot describe how it felt uh, for me. It was I felt like I was going to throw up. It was the worst professional experience I've ever had in my career. Just because you're watching someone struggle to use a product that you helped create, and that we were ignorant of just how difficult we had made it for them. Setup procedures took, in one person's case, it took them 3,000 steps, and they had to do it all over again. And again, they were saying there's probably a better way to do this, and we were thinking, oh no, there's not, because we're terrible people. And so this is actually what led us to all get trained in user interaction design. He got trained at Cooper University. Anyway, and so that notion of what there's no more important activity than watching your customers use your product. And it was so important for us to fix those things because we had been building this product for years, right, without any of this feedback. So let's call that amplification. The second story that hit me, this was probably in 2013, where when we were doing the state of DevOps research, which was the first year that I was doing it with Jez Humble, and we found that we found that one of the key predictors was continuous integration and deployment processes, but specifically continuous integration. Do you have daily builds, daily tests, or to give you fast, at the minimum, daily feedback on your work? And I remember chuckling about this, like, oh, well, that makes so much sense. We found this signal in the research, and then it hit me that around 2000 and about the same time frame, 2003, I remember this problem that we had where our cruise control server broke at Tripwire, and we had to make a decision. Do we hire a build engineer, or do we hire another developer? And I was on the side of, let's hire another developer because it's all about working on features. And in that moment in 2013, it hit me about how bad of a decision that was, and it just it made me recall the story that we started hearing about in 2005, 2006, is that we used to be able to ship, back then a CD or DVD, every 9 months. And after we lost our build server, we were only able to ship once every year and a half because, the cost of the code integration, the testing effort was so high that we couldn't afford to ship every 9 months anymore. We essentially have the release frequency. And so, because we had to amortize it over more time. And all of that could be traced to our inability to get daily feedback on our work. And so I have to believe, that this had a material impact, negative impact on our ability to compete in the marketplace. And so we filed to go public in 2010. We never made it public. And I can point to many of our competitors who did. And I know that they had better engineering processes than we did. And so the story, in this case, it took me 8 years to realize, just the how consequential and negatively that decision made. And so the better decision is, that you have to have certain infrastructure there to help developers do their work well. That's the build systems, the test systems, the ability for everyone to do their work easily and well. And so again, this is amplification. This is about linearization and simplification. This is about slowfication. And so as leaders, I think I'll give you two um, unsolicited piece of advice. One is, watch your customers use the product. You will learn so much from doing that. And two is look at your internal practices and ask yourself, or better yet, ask your engineers, how, to what extent is it possible for you to do your work easily and well and get fast feedback on your work so you can find problems early, fix them early, or are you letting them all pile up and you have to fix them all at once, at the end of the release? And life is never good when you're doing that. And I have to imagine this resonates with some of your own experiences, Mehmet.
Yeah, and but I have like two comments. One is fun. I will keep it later, but I think it's underrated thing. And because I used to work as solution consultant for some companies, and I was telling product management team, and like, guys, okay, we are the guys on the ground. You need to see how the customer use the product, um because sometimes even we customers are smart, right? So they sometimes they ask, okay, why they decide to design it this way? What was the logic behind taking the decision, let's say, to put this item before this item in the menu, or why when I do this it's behaving this way? Of course, I'm not the guy who wrote the code, so I cannot, but I have to do some, yeah, but 100%. And I've seen the companies who actually go and, they ask the customer for feedback. And even as you said, maybe someone from the executive team, on whether it's the CTO, the product manager, or someone, even maybe a software engineer, it makes sense for them. Fun fact, maybe for the people who are maybe new generation than me and Gene, I said, "What? You have to ship updates on CDs?" Yes, guys. I remember I used to have to go and wait for the Microsoft service patches coming in
Right.
the CD to do this. So this is before, because internet was slow, so you cannot download these things. So yeah, 100%. Um,
Right.
Yeah, but it's like the good old days, I would say. Gene, anything you wished I have asked you? Did I miss anything?
No, that's I can't think of anything, but I would just love to describe, they say the goal of science is to explain the most amount of observable phenomenon with the fewest number of principles, confirm deeply held intuitions and reveal surprising insights. For me, working on this book for the last 3.5 years with Dr. Steven Spear has done that. I mean, in fact, even in the generative AI space, they say that all, LLMs are large language models. They're a form of compression. And I think the same concept, right? How much can you express with the least? And for me, what came out of the work wiring the winning organization, what I'm hoping it gives leaders is a small number of principles to span every domain of work. And it's not just software, but it's technology, it's engineering, it's manufacturing, any system where you have to integrate the work of many functional specialties towards a common objective. You see these phenomena at work. And I'm hoping that this book not only confirms the intuitions of technology leaders, but actually gives a common language for that technology leader to talk with their peers and even their bosses.
I have no doubt that they will benefit from it. It's available, I think, on Amazon, right? So they
Yep,
can
at your
go and
favorite
buy it.
book retailers.
Favorite book retailers. So for the guy in the US, in Canada, you can, you know where to go.
Yeah.
For the people in the other part of the world, you can find it. I checked before we started, so it's on Amazon. You can find it there. For people here in Dubai, in the Middle East, it's available even in the local Amazon as well, so you can grab your version. Dr. Jean, like how can people find about you and about the work you do?
Oh, best way to reach me, I think, is these days is probably LinkedIn. And I'm
Yeah.
also on Twitter X at Real Gene Kim. But I would go to LinkedIn, and I'm available there and posting content more than I have in years.
Okay, great. So I will make sure two things. I will put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, and I will put also the link to the book. And it's one of my most enjoyable episodes I have ever done. I learned a lot from you today. It's fun. I always like when I speak with someone like you, Gene, who is able to take a very complex, and this is where we started actually, to take something which should complex. It's not complex by any means, but make it fun and everyone can understand it. So even if I don't have the enough background, that was very useful to me, and I think it will be useful for people in the domain. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. And it was my pleasure to have you on the podcast. And so this is the way we end. If you are first time listening to me on this podcast with Gene today, thank you for passing by. Make sure that you subscribe on any podcast app you use. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the others. And if you are watching this on YouTube, so subscribe and don't forget to tell about this podcast to your friends and colleagues. They will find something useful for them. And as usual, thank you very much for the comments, for all your questions and all your suggestions. I'm taking them into consideration. So thank you very much. So thank you again. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.